This is Arab Talk on KPOO 89.5 FM in San Francisco. This is Arab Talk with Jess and Jamal. I'm Jess Ghannam.
And I'm Jamal Dajani.
Jamal, we have two breaking pieces of news within the last 24 hours. Number one, there's been an assassination attempt on presidential nominee Donald Trump. The person has been put into has been picked up and is being interrogated, and the story behind that is very interesting. And in addition, the Houthi resistance fighters have fired a missile that actually got into central Israel and evaded, it appears, all of the American-Israeli defense systems. So the situation on the ground in historic Palestine remains very unstable right now, Jamal, as we continue to talk about the delusional concept of a ceasefire. There's no ceasefire anywhere in sight. We're going to be covering a lot of stories today, including the impact of the Trump-Harris debate. And my question for you and our listeners, who do you think is more loyal to Israel, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris? In an interesting international law development, Chile has joined South Africa in its case against Israel for committing genocide in Gaza. And we're curious to find out, when will the ICC issue its warrants for the arrest of Netanyahu and Gallant? And sadly, Jamal, the American-Turkish student who was assassinated by the Israeli military, Asin Yoregi, has been buried in her family hometown in Turkey. Her murder by the Israeli military has also been buried by the U.S. officials and U.S. media. And it's important to note that President Biden has failed to call the family members of this assassinated American. Before we get to all those stories, we're going to watch a really kind of difficult and amazing interview with Abu Eqtaish. He's the Accountability Program Director at Defense for Children International in Palestine, and is going to discuss the recent report entitled Targeting Childhood: Palestinian Children Killed by Israeli Forces and Settlers in the Occupied West Bank. And this is part of a decades-long policy to kill, interrogate, and torture Palestinian children by the Israeli military. It's been going on for decades, and it's been ramping up.
That's right, Jess. And we will post a link to the report for those who are interested in reading. It's a very eye-opening report. But first, let's watch Abu Eqtaish. Since October 7th, in tandem with Israel's campaign of genocide targeting Palestinians in Gaza, Israeli forces immediately escalated operations throughout the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, carrying out military incursions into Palestinian communities. Some see another Gaza in the making as military tanks routinely roll through Palestinian villages, destroying buildings and infrastructure, as well as systematically blocking ambulances and paramedics from reaching children injured by Israeli soldiers. In the past year, Israel has killed over 700 Palestinians in the occupied West Bank and East Jerusalem, with 159, or over 20% of them, children, whom it routinely targets with lethal force. Most of the children were killed with live ammunition, usually a single bullet to the head or torso. Targeting childhood: Palestinian children killed by Israeli forces and settlers in the occupied West Bank is the recently released report by Defense for Children International in Palestine. It is an independent local Palestinian child rights organization dedicated to defending and promoting the rights of children living in the West Bank, East Jerusalem, and the Gaza Strip. Joining us on Arab Talk from Palestine to talk about the report's findings is Abu Eqtaish, the Accountability Program Director at Defense for Children International in Palestine. Welcome to Arab Talk, Aid.
Hi, thank you for having me.
In spite of all the killing and atrocities being perpetrated by Israel on the Palestinians in Gaza, I was taken aback by how many Palestinian children Israeli soldiers have killed in the West Bank by direct fire to the head or the torso. Describe some of the case studies in the report of children who were shot dead just going about their daily lives.
Just to give a background information about the killing of children in the occupied Palestinian territories, including Gaza Strip. Between the year 2000 and 2023, DCI documented the killing of 2,300 Palestinian children. This is until the 7th of October 2023, because after that, we do not have the capacity to follow up all the casualties in Gaza Strip, but we estimate that around 17,000 children were killed in Gaza Strip since the assault against Gaza. But during the period between the year 2000 and 2023, we documented 2,300, among them 705 children in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem. During the period between October 7th, 2023 and the end of July 2024, we documented the killing of 141 Palestinian children in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem. This means that almost 1/5 of Palestinian children who were killed in the occupied West Bank, including East Jerusalem, between 2000 and now, were killed during the last 10 months or so.
The methodology used in creating this report is painstaking and according to United Nations standards. This is important because there are those that want to dismiss or discredit the reports testifying to crimes perpetrated by Israel on the Palestinians. What goes into verifying and documenting these crimes?
DCID, one of its role is to document, defend, and advocate for the rights of Palestinian children. So documenting the violation perpetrated by the Israeli authorities is one pillar of DCI work. So in our documentation, we concentrate on the right to life and right to liberty. Under the right to life, we concentrate on child fatalities, child injuries, and using children as human shields, as well as settler violence. Under the category of child liberty, we concentrate on ill treatment and torture in Palestinian children, as well as the lack of territorial guarantees in the Israeli military legal system, as well as the arbitrary detention, which is manifested clearly by placing children under administrative detention orders. So DCI have field workers spread in the occupied Palestinian territories. We have field workers almost in every Palestinian governorate. So whenever we hear about child right violation, our field workers go to the scene and make their investigation through taking statements from the victims or eyewitnesses in order to have an idea about how the violation took place, and we use our information in our advocacy. And as a child rights organization, we regard that our credibility is our most important asset. So we try to reflect the situation as it is. And the outcome of this investigation, we put it in our advocacy materials, whether in the form of a news alert or a feature story or a report, and we submit this information to different bodies in order to ask them to intervene to protect Palestinian children.
One rather chilling note about the research on gunshot wounds was that the precise location of the wounds of 8% of the children killed couldn't be exactly determined because Israeli confiscated their bodies. How common is it for the Israeli military to confiscate the bodies of children and adults it kills?
Now it's more common than before. For example, out of 141 children that we documented for this report, 18 bodies were confiscated. So when the body is confiscated, we will not be able to identify exactly the gunshots in the body of the child. Now, maybe between the year 2016 and until now, we documented the cases of about 40 Palestinian children whose bodies were confiscated. The Israeli authorities returned the bodies of 5 children, and right now they are confiscating the body of 35 Palestinian children.
What are the reasons they give for confiscating these bodies?
Usually, it's a very long process in order to claim. So whenever the child is accused of attempting to stab an Israeli soldier, so they confiscate the body of that child. And in other evidences, for example, we documented the case of Ruqayya, who is just 4 years old. She was with her mother in public taxi, and the Israeli authorities in one of the checkpoints, they shot toward one of the vehicles that didn't stop in the checkpoint, and the girl was killed. After that, they confiscated her body for almost 8 days, and after that, they returned her body to her family. But in other instances, so they do not give justification for this practice, despite the fact that this practice is very harmful for the family of the child, and it's a collective punishment against the whole family of the children whose bodies were confiscated.
The report says that Israel has a decades-long de facto policy of shooting to kill and has been killing Palestinian children routinely for decades. Yet the report notes that even by this metric, what has been happening since October 7 in the West Bank is extreme. Explain why, as well as the range of fire Israeli soldiers and snipers are shooting children from.
Basically, as I mentioned, that 1/5 of the cases that we documented in the West Bank, including East Jerusalem, were killed during the reported period, which is 10 months. But the practice was part and parcel of the Israeli soldier practices against Palestinian children and against Palestinian civilians in general, because there is no accountability for these violations. Almost Israel do not open investigation in the killing of Palestinian children, and in case if they opened investigation, usually the outcome of the investigation that the Israeli soldiers acted according to the guidelines, and there is no accountability for these practices. So the prevailing culture of impunity that the Israeli soldiers enjoy, it's like a green light for them to continue these practices against Palestinian children. And now, during the past period, we saw and we heard about many cases of children. After shooting the Palestinian children, the military vehicle run over the body of the killed child, and in other cases, they prevented paramedics and ambulance to reach the injured child in order to be sure that the child was killed. So this practice, I think it's inhuman practice, and the problem that there is no accountability for all these crimes and violations committed against Palestinian children. According to our report, 43% of the children that we documented in this report, the ambulances and paramedics were prevented from reaching the injured child.
Talking about accountability, and according to your report, not a single Israeli soldier has been held accountable for killing any of the Palestinian children included in this report, despite widespread and systematic evidence of unlawful killings. So what's the recourse? Who does your organization present evidence to? And has recourse been taken against Israel by any international government or organization?
In the past, we used to make complaints to the Israeli authorities in order to open investigations in these allegations. But at some point, we reached the conclusion that it's nonsense, because they do not open investigation in these allegations. And in case they open investigation and the outcome of this investigation, there is no accountability. But I believe that it's the responsibility of the Israeli authorities to promptly open investigation in all these violations, but they do not do that. The other thing, it's not just related to killing Palestinian children. Even in cases of using Palestinian children as human shields, which is a war crime, there is no investigation opened. And we believe that this is because Israel is unwilling to hold its soldiers to account.
Okay, well, if you can't get any justice from Israel, we know you won't get any justice from Israel. I mean, do you share the outcome of this report with international organizations, the United Nations, or with governments? The EU, for example, they have representatives on the ground, the United States, and so on. I mean, have you shared this information with them? Have they, given you any feedback about the report?
One part of our work is to spread the information about the violation of Palestinian children's rights, whether it was their right to life or their right to be from ill treatment and torture. So we share this information with other countries, because Israel is state party to the Convention on the Rights of on the Child. And it's the responsibility of other states in order to put pressure on Israel to abide its legal obligation under the Convention on the Rights of the Child. We share this information with UN bodies like Human Rights Council. We share our information with governments in order to put pressure on Israel to abide to its legal obligation. But unfortunately, there's before the countries where, let's say, do not take concrete measures against Israel to abide to its legal obligation. But the problem now, after the assault in Gaza, we believe that many governments are involved in the crimes committed by Israel, because they provide Israel with the diplomatic, political, financial, and military support. So the situation now is more complicated when it comes to the role of the third parties to put pressure on Israel. And I think that this practice from other governments, not imposing sanctions against Israel, emboldened Israel to continue its crimes against Palestinian people without being held to account.
How big of a part does settler violence play in this most recent ethnic cleansing and terror campaign against Palestinians in the West Bank? And how complicit is the Israeli army in supporting their pogroms of villages, for example?
During the last period, we noticed that there is escalation in settler violence against Palestinian communities through invading Palestinian communities, setting fire or practicing violence against Palestinian people, and usually the Israeli army accompanying settlers in these activities in order to provide help for and protection for the settlers when they are committing these crimes against Palestinian people. So despite the fact that the role of Israel as a government to protect Palestinian people who are under the Israeli occupation. They are protecting the offender. They are protecting the Israeli settlers. And out of the cases that we documented, settlers were involved in 2 cases, but we were unable to identify exactly whether the children were killed as a result of the gunfire from the Israeli settlers or from the Israeli army.
You started talking about this, but I want to hear it probably more in details. The genocide in Gaza made so many people aware of Israel's long-standing impunity or exception to international law. So many children killed and starved so deliberately, so cruelly, and the United States and other Western countries are not willing to stop this. Talk about how the normalized killings and abductions of children are the result of this impunity.
I think that this is the case because now killing Palestinian children becomes part of a normal thing that people outside they are witnessing, seeing how Palestinian children are killed, how their communities are destroyed, how they are starved, how they are prevented from receiving the basic necessity for continuing their life, like provide them with food, water, fuel, or medicine, destroying their schools and hospitals, and the international community do not intervene in order to provide Palestinian children with these basic needs. So we believe that the international community in this action is complicit to the Israeli crimes committed against Palestinian children, because just imagine that these atrocities and the crimes is taking place in another part of the world. So what's the reaction from the international community to protect children in that part of the world? So, but because Israel is the criminal and they enjoy the full support from the United States and other Western governments, so the international community is begging Israel just to make, let's say, vaccination of polio. And this process was very complicated, despite the fact that polio was about to spread among Palestinian children in Gaza. The same when it comes to food, to medicine, to allowing Palestinian children to travel outside in order to receive the medication, because the health situation in Gaza almost there is no health. There is no hospitals, clinics, medicine. Almost there is nothing. And we heard about, and everybody heard about the operation that amputation without using antithesis. So I think that the international community is complicit in the crimes that Israel is committing against Palestinian children, because they do not intervene to protect Palestinian children in Gaza, despite the fact that the whole literature and about children's rights, it was accompanied with conflict zone around the world. So the international community put the standards and the principles to protect children, but the what's going on in Gaza now make it clear that there is a very big gap between these principles and the standards and the how Palestinian children are living through this ordeal.
We also heard sickening rhetoric from Israeli officials and religious leaders justifying this killing. What are your thoughts on this?
And I think that this proves that there is an intent for practicing genocide against Palestinian people in Gaza, among them children. So when we hear Israeli officials saying that about Palestinians that they are human animals, or about children that they are terrorists. So they want to lay the ground to justify the practices against Palestinian children, which is inhuman. But the main idea is to dehumanize us as Palestinians among us children in order to justify these practices and the crimes against Palestinian children. So, but at the end of the day, this proves that there is intent from the Israeli officials to commit genocide against Palestinian people.
In the greater context, Israel is in the West Bank on the pretext of countering a Palestinian insurgency. Those who are reported from the ground say it is in a rush to ethnically cleanse Palestinians and settle as much as of the West Bank as it can. However, the International Court of Justice recently gave an advisory opinion that Israel's presence and settlement in all of the land it occupied in 1967 is illegal. Will the international rule of law prevail, or is it headed for a collision with world powers? I mean, how helpful do you feel, or this basically advisory from the International Court of Justice saying that the entire West Bank and Gaza is, the occupation of the entire West Bank and Gaza is illegal? Do you think this is going to change? Is this going to change anything?
I think it's very important ruling from the ICJ, but this ruling needs to be implemented from other states. So I think that this ruling put the other governments who are supporting Israel in its enterprise before the facts that Israel is committing ethnic cleansing in the West Bank and in Gaza, and settlement expansion as part and parcel of the Israeli policy and strategies. So I think it's the role of other countries to translate this ruling into practices through imposing sanctions on Israel, because they can't keep advocating for human rights, democracy, and all these values one side, and practicing contrary on the other side. So now it's the moment of the truth to decide whether they want to keep respecting these values and principles, or the all international human rights and the humanitarian law. It's in the stake, because it's not about Palestinians. It's about the whole set of rules that's set by the international community in order to protect public order on the international level. So now is the time for all governments in order to intervene to prevent Israel from continuing its genocidal project and ethnic cleansing process against Palestinians who are living in the occupied Palestinian territories. Otherwise, the all international human rights and the humanitarian law principles are on the stake.
Abu Eqtaish, thank you for coming on Arab Talk.
Thank you.
That's the voice in the face of Abu Eqtaish. He's the Accountability Program Director for Defend Children International in Palestine. And Jamal, I mean, I've had direct experience, because of my work in Palestine for decades now, interviewing, speaking with, and engaging with Palestinian prisoners, including children who have been tortured by the Israeli military. But the full breadth and depth of the attack on Palestinian children who, against international law, are detained, denied international law protections, and tortured is really staggering, that the Israeli military and government get away with these breaches of morality and international law, and the United States does nothing.
The thing is just, We have the numbers of the children who died. We don't have the entire number because many of these children in Gaza are buried under rubble. And we have thousands and thousands of children who are amputees and have all kinds of problems, medical problems. Again, we're getting these numbers every day. And of course, we also have, which people don't talk about, a large number of orphans, children who survived, but both their parents were killed. So that's another situation. Let's go on to the rest of our program. Jess, suspect is in custody after an apparent assassination attempt this Sunday against former President Donald Trump at his golf course in West Palm Beach, Florida. Now, the interesting part, this is, of course, it is very interesting because this is the second attempt, on Donald Trump. And the interesting part is, the suspect's name is identified as Ryan Wesley Ruth, aged 58. And the interesting part about it, he appears to have been motivated by frustration with U.S. policy on the war in Ukraine.
Right.
He has been to Ukraine many times. He was on interviews and on Newsweek and other media outlets.
He was interviewed by the New York Times reporter too.
Yes, that he was there to recruit fighters for Ukraine, and some also made a connection. I don't know if this has been verified, but he's also with the Azov, whatever brigades connected with that. But that's really interesting because, the first assassination attempt, we don't know the details because the suspect was killed.
Right.
And he's a young man. This is a grown adult with a lot of, by the way, footprint on social media, on Facebook and Twitter, which has been removed. I don't know whether it's by Facebook itself or Twitter or by the FBI ordering them to remove that content.
That's what I think. But we'll eventually see it, right? We'll eventually see it.
Well, everything leaves a footprint. So he has an ideology and beliefs and whatever, and of course he's in custody, so he's going to be interrogated. So we're going to find out more why he intended on assassinating Donald Trump. But that's I think there were 2 assassination attempts. I was looking into things like this on another president, which was Gerald Ford.
Right.
But I don't think there has been 2 assassination attempts so close to each other in recent history.
Yeah, I mean, there's a number of interesting subplots to this disturbing development, Jamal. One of the more interesting developments is that Elon Musk posted a musing about why there have been no attempts on Kamala Harris and Tim Walz or Joe Biden. It was very disturbing kind of musing that Elon Musk posted on X, formerly Twitter. It was quickly taken down, Jamal. So the rhetoric and the kind of intensity as we're leading up to November is increasing. And I just want to add a slight footnote as we get closer and closer to the elections in November. I found it kind of interesting that the Pope in a post basically said both Trump and Harris are flawed candidates. Very interesting to see the international attention on this, the assassination attempts, the kind of vitriol that's out there. And I think, more and more we're seeing that the excitement about Kamala Harris is starting to wear off, Jamal. So the race is tightening up.
And for those who had watched the debate, if you call it a debate,
was it really a debate, though, Jamal?
Well,
was it really a debate?
I think it was more of a Hollywood production, entertainment kind of debate.
Exactly.
Let's put the word debate. And I don't want to talk about Trump saying that Haitians are eating pet
dogs and cats and dogs.
Which, by the way, both assassins or who attempted assassination on Trump were white folks. Neither one of them was an immigrant or Haitian.
Hello.
So just people should chew on this a little bit, just to use the expression from cats and dogs, and think about it. I mean, here he goes around, spends crazy minutes vilifying immigrants, making up some stories from, not making up some stories, but basically repeating a story that I think a young female student posted on Facebook, making, just a rumor, and they ran away with it, that
Right.
these poor migrants are basically eating cats and dogs in the neighborhood. And he used that as talking points in front of 50, 60 million people who were watching the debate.
Yeah, and they're doubling. And by the way, Jamal, just a couple of things. They're doubling down on it. JD Vance is doubling down on it. And it's part of the heightened rhetoric that's happening right now. And someone that we've been speaking about a long time ago has resurfaced in the Trump campaign, Jamal, Laura Loomer, who is this extremely disturbed, delusional, and probably mentally unstable individual who's been cozying up and following Trump on the campaign. I think this speaks to a number of very interesting points that we've been speaking about for a while now. But I think your one point deserves a lot of attention. Despite his attacks on folks of color, on immigrant communities, the people who are trying twice unsuccessfully now to assassinate Trump have been white men. I mean, that's an interesting phenomenon, don't you think?
It is. It is. I mean, those are the most dangerous. If you look at all the statistics as far as mass attacks or mass murder in schools and malls, and the Las Vegas incident, and movie theaters and so forth, they all happen to be white males, yet they keep vilifying immigrants and brown and black people. But one thing they both agreed on, and that's actually posed the question: who's more loyal to Israel, Donald Trump or Kamala Harris?
Oh, I have an answer, Jamal. I think Kamala Harris is far more loyal to Israel than Donald Trump. Donald Trump doesn't care about anybody. He'll throw anybody in any country under the bus, 100%, whether it's Ukraine, China, Russia, or Israel. And this is despite, I think, Benjamin Netanyahu saying that he favors Trump, which, whatever. I think all the data, all the analysis, all of the things that came up in the so-called debate clearly place Kamala Harris and the Democratic ticket much more on the side of a greater and more disturbing and kind of problematic support of Israel. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I don't know. I mean, on one hand, Trump accuses her that if she's elected, that Israel will disappear basically off the map. Within 2 years, there'll be no more Israel. And then she stands up and repeats the same lies, talking about rape and October 7th, and showing no empathy to Palestinians, very slight empathy to Palestinians, and saying that she has been a major supporter of Israel for so many years, and then she will do everything to give Israel all that it needs to protect itself, meaning all these 4,000-pound bombs to drop on Palestinian children in Gaza.
To me,
she hasn't learned her lesson. I mean, the two simple demands is to call for a ceasefire. I mean, they've been calling for a ceasefire, to do something about it, force Israel, to abide by ceasefire by stopping shipments of arms to Israel. She hasn't done that. And I was going to talk about this, but briefly we'll talk about it. But they've been actually now attacking the Green Party candidate, if you've noticed, because they're Jill Stein, they're so worried about her picking up some votes in swing states like Michigan and other states, and they have AOC attacking her. They have other people attacking her because they're very worried. But so if you're worried about the undecided vote or uncommitted vote or the Muslim vote, why don't you do something about Israel slaughtering Palestinians on a daily basis?
That's why, Jamal, that's why I think, even though Trump has made these comments about Kamala Harris, if she's elected, Israel will be gone in 2 years. That's just, his typical rhetoric. But in terms of articulating a specific policy that supports an apartheid state that has been condemned by the international community, the ICC and the ICJ, where arms shipments have been, basically held up now, certain arms by the UK, and I think it's going to spread to other countries, clearly committing these war crimes and a genocide against the civilian population. Kamala Harris has not backed down. In fact, Jamal, I would say Kamala Harris has doubled down on her support for Israel. And as we get closer and closer to, November, when the election happens, we're going to see this kind of rhetoric of supporting genocide and supporting, as her statement indicated, Jamal, she'll do whatever it takes to support Israel, which means billions of more dollars, billions of support for more weapons of mass destruction. I think there's no question about this race in terms of who loves and supports the apartheid state more than the other. I think I give that award to Kamala Harris.
Meanwhile, Chile has officially submitted a request to the International Court of Justice, the ICJ, to participate in South Africa's ongoing legal proceedings against Israel. That's according to the court in The Hague. And Chile is the latest country to basically signal its intention to become involved in the case. And I think the other, so far, 13 countries in total have applied to join or declared their intention to join the South Africa case, including Turkey, Egypt, Spain, Belgium, and Nicaragua. And I think there is now a serious panic by Israeli officials. Even so, we're seeing this delay, that the warrant for the arrest of Netanyahu and Gallant will be submitted soon, because they've been attacking, as if the warrants have been submitted, which kind of tells me that someone leaked something. That's what I think. So what do you think about that, Jess? Will the warrants be submitted soon?
Yeah, I think the warrant will be submitted. And the other thing that I picked up recently, which I think supports your theory, is that there was another leaked report saying that the Israeli government is putting pressure on the United States to do something in the United Nations to undo the ICC and ICJ rulings and the warrants that are coming. So there's a lot of back channel maneuvering by the Israeli government. They are freaked out about it. Clearly they're freaked out about it. They're doing a full court press, but I think it's going to happen before the U.S. elections for sure. I think these warrants are going to be released. It's going to include Gallant and Netanyahu and whomever else, and let's see what happens. Just one thing quickly, Jamal, because we're seeing so much kind of uptick in the brutality that the Israeli military is carrying out. They've been killing civilians in these so-called safe zones in Gaza. 20 to 30 to 40 men, women, and children are being murdered by U.S.-made missiles almost every day, who are living in tents. The West Bank is on fire. We should let our listeners and viewers know and remind them that because we're in this election cycle now and Americans tend to be really focused on the election, Israel, every 4 years, uses this as an opportunity to increase its brutality and its occupation and its ethnic cleansing of Palestinians in Gaza, West Bank, Jerusalem, and in 48 for that matter. So I think we can anticipate this kind of brutality to be, the uptick in it to be even more so as we get closer to November.
Our final story is that the Aysenur Ezgi, Turkish-American activist, whom Israel admitted that it killed her by one of its soldiers a week ago, even though they make up a story that the bullet ricocheted and she wasn't intentionally targeted.
It's bogus.
So her father, he made a statement, very upset, and he said that the U.S. government was deliberately avoiding a direct investigation into its close allies' action out of bias. Mahmoud Suat Egi renewed his call last week for American authorities to launch an investigation into her killing.
Good luck.
And her burial, of course, was in her hometown in Turkey's Aegean coastal town of Didim. Thousands of people showed up. Not a single American official was there. Her father did not receive a call from President Biden. And so the family, actually, they thanked the family, the father, the bereaved father, thanked Turkey for not abandoning the case of what he referred as his daughter's arbitrary murder. But he blamed the United States for not doing anything. I mean, she's, after all, an American. And everybody was, he was getting condolences from friends and family and Turkish officials and others, but none from the U.S. government.
Yeah, of course, because we have ongoing racism and political, moral, ethical asymmetry, where some American citizens, Jamal, who get assassinated and murdered by foreign militaries and governments deserve a call from President Biden and the Biden administration, and others don't. Here we have a young woman who is an American citizen, Turkish American citizen, who was standing in a nonviolent protest against the brutal, illegal colonial settler violence that Israeli settlers commit every day. And she was assassinated. She was shot in the head. And it's important to note that the recent video footage that was leaked, contradicted everything the Israeli military and government has said about this. She was standing, not doing anything, completely engaged in a nonviolent protest where she
well, actually, just to correct you, the protest was over. The demonstration was over. It
she was just standing.
They just like there was no protest or anything. Everybody was just standing and heading home when she was shot.
Yeah. So let's talk about the moral asymmetry. I guess some people are deserving of American apologies from the president, and other people, if you happen to be brown, black, or politically supporting Palestinians or Palestinian solidarity, then you don't deserve a call. It's just to end it today, Jamal. It's going to come back to haunt the Democrats in November. Buyer beware, as I like to say.
You've been listening to Arab Talk on KPOO San Francisco 89.5 FM. Go to our website, arabtalkradio.com, to download the latest shows, and we'll talk to you next week.
We'll see you next week.